Alrighty, welcome back everyone. It is LaughNgamez here. I'm back with another Starcraft 2 1 versus 1 bot AI cast. We have got ourselves what should be a good one here today, as it's going to be the best of the best. NegativeZero, the Protoss bot, taking on Caninana, the Zergledurgle. And yes, we have got ourselves what should be a good one. Caninana actually took down NegativeZero in the last video I cast, so I thought I'd do another one. And it was in a really interesting way, with lots of lings, just early, sort of early aggression. And yeah, we'll see if it can do something similar in this game. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't already, click that like button, leave a comment down below saying more bots if you want to see more of these bot matches, and then subscribe if you haven't already subscribed, as we put out videos daily on the channel. And yeah, just big thanks to everyone that is a YouTube member. It goes a long way to supporting these daily casts. So let's see how this one's going to go. Looks like a pretty standard opening from both of these bots. So this is going to give me a moment to just pull up the ladder for you guys. This is something that I'm going to try and remember to do every few videos, is just to pull the ladder up to sort of give an update as to where the bots are. We are presently still in pre-season 2 of 2025, sort of it's an incredibly experimental season, because it is on the new patch with just a handful of new maps, because there is some bugs on some of the other new maps, so they need to be updated. And I'm sure that will happen at some point in order to get those working. And yeah, just as far as the actual rankings go, NegativeZero at the top, Deimos climbing back up, as it was quite low previously. 12 pool bots somehow still hanging around in spot 10, which is very impressive. We've got Changeling, Benbot, Antibot. I mean, 4 of the top bots are team Eris, and that's very, very impressive. But then we do still have the other bots jostling back and forth. So I'll go ahead and pop that off now, as we do have a scouting ling from Caninana running in. 2 probes are assigned to try and catch it, but catch it they shall not, as lings are pretty darn speedy. Then there is a nice wall at the front for NegativeZero. That Adept is shading around still. There is one heading over to Caninana's base. There's only 21 drones for Caninana, so if it loses a single drone to this Adept, this will be incredibly painful. The Adept runs on in, and it does begin working away on a drone. It only gets 1 shot off. Will it be able to complete a kill? No, it doesn't. So Caninana shuts that Adept down without a single unit loss. Meanwhile, the Protoss bot is going for quite a quick robo-bay, as these probes are trying to chase after this scouting ling still. The stalker staying in the wall so the ling can kind of just have free reign. And this is a decent amount of lost mining time. 2 probes not mining is no small amount. Caninana's ling is just running all over the place, having the time of its life. Maybe this Adept popping out will handle that, as yeah, it should potentially kill off that ling, as it does begin going after a 1-shot shade and probe zap to try and finish the job. Yeah, really, really nice scouting though, and harassment. I mean, it's simple yet effective for NegativeZero to try and clean up this ling with the probes, because like single scouting units can potentially just be killed with workers, but in this case, it is unfortunately costing a lot of resources, as 2 probes over what is probably a minute of this is not an insignificant amount. The Adepts are still shading around, completing that shade, not hunting after that, as they are shading forward to be out on the map. There is a Colossus on the way. Who knows? Maybe the Colossus can clean up that ling, or I guess the probes did eventually get it. Meanwhile, Caninana does have a very, very quick 4th base on the way. NegativeZero has got an observer in its 3rd base location in the PvZ matchup. That's very important, as otherwise there can just be a burrowed ling blocking your expo infinitely. So now there is a couple of Adepts shading for NegativeZero, but I do think that the Protoss bot probably wants to build up to a fairly strong army. Say if it can get out like 2-3 Colossus, then maybe push. It will have a lot of success, as Caninana is investing in that layer, getting out lots more defensive Lings, but Lings are one of those things. They do not scale very well in the late game, so if we see NegativeZero get up a second Colossus, that would be a big deal. There is already a second one on the way, +1 attack as well to make those swipes deal some extra damage. Still no third base, but it looks like that will go up soon. One of the really nice things about NegativeZero is it does always have the probes in position to build the Nexus right as soon as it hits the mineral threshold. There's a lot of bots out there, and it's very simple to program just to say, hey, I got enough money for a base, grab a worker and build the base. NegativeZero pre-sends out that probe, so it doesn't waste any time having the probe, say, move from the natural to the third. It's little things like that, which really add up in StarCraft 2. Now that Zealot cleans up a Ling that was trying to block the fourth base, Overseer and Observer having a face-off there. Now, let's see, as we do get Glio Reconstitution on the way for Caninana. There's an Infestation Pit, +1 melee on the way. NegativeZero does have 2 Colossi out with not a third, just another Observer on the way. Getting out that third Colossus would be quite nice. Blink is being reasonably timed from the Protoss bot, though, which is quite nice to see, as NegativeZero sometimes delays that more than you'd like. But these Stalkers are moving out on the map, Adepts moving out on the map. There hasn't been too much action so far this game. The Protoss is just getting up that third base. We're getting a Sentry on the way. Still no fourth Colossi yet, or third Colossi yet. And Immortal actually gets fired up. Now, that's not the best against mass Lings, so hopefully NegativeZero doesn't go for too many more of those. I do wonder if that's because it saw a Roach or two. Now Colossi and Zealots are moving out. The Zealots being able to buffer for the Colossi will be a big deal. Now NegativeZero is, yeah, just moving around with those big old giraffes. We're getting double Immortal production. +2 is on the way. Blink is almost done. The Colossi are separated from the pack, which is a little bit risky. But for now, NegativeZero is keeping a tight lid on things and not taking any unnecessary losses as it just heads towards this very strong army. Now there is Zealots to support this. No charge on the Zealots. Might leave this a little bit underpowered, but we do get that fired up. There is batteries being built at the expo, which is nice to see. That will help with the defense. And then the Protoss is still just building up this army. Now, that's not necessarily a good thing for NegativeZero sitting back forever, as Caninana is a bot that has some of the best late game out there, and it is presently on 5 bases, getting out infestors with 83 workers. That's no small amount. So the rate of Zerg expansion has been quite significant. Still, NegativeZero, though, is getting up that 4th base. +2 attack being almost done for the Protoss is nice. The Zerg is heading into its own upgrades. Lings are testing the waters now, as NegativeZero kind of sees what's lurking out there. Colossi are moving out. The Overseers, meanwhile, of Caninana are providing vision on absolutely everything as they just poke on in, controlled by, I don't know, a 20,000 APM or something. Those Overseers just coming in, coming out, avoiding any threats to themselves. Now, NegativeZero is moving on out. It's actually got double Colossi production going right now, which is very, very nice. +3 attack is on the way. Now, Caninana is thinking about countering these Colossi, though, as it does have Corruptors on the way, and they are a very good counter to this, potentially, as NegativeZero has some Stalkers almost getting caught out. They are blinking to safety, though, and the Protoss army is moving out. Now, those Colossi are a little exposed. There's not too many Stalkers to cover them. One of them does begin eating a few shots, and it is kind of separated from the pack. Now, a big assault from the Zerg as Caninana moves forward, but NegativeZero is putting out a lot of damage. A Neural Parasite on the Immortal is quite nice. I mean, Immortals kill Protoss units quite quickly. It does get freed, though, thanks to the rest of NegativeZero's army. The Colossi also didn't die, which is very, very important. It almost did, but it's still alive. I'm still alive. as the Colossi has got, how many kills on it? 16. NegativeZero is getting up that 5th base now, so going to have a nice economy behind this, and we are coming to that situation where it's kind of maxed out against maxed out. Now the Corruptors of Caninana are moving forward, not targeting down the injured Colossi, in fact spreading out their damage quite a bit on all of the Colossi, which means that none of them have gone down yet. The Stalkers are blinking after some of those Corruptors. We do get a Ling harassing at the 5th, but eventually a Cannon, I think, will clean that up. And then we're just entering this kind of constant skirmish stage. But things are not looking too hot for Caninana, as NegativeZero's army is looking good, and it is barreling forward, stepping onto creep now, as Caninana really is on the defensive. If it can get to some Broodlords, that would be nice for it. However, there isn't a greater Spire yet. Vipers are being added into the mix, but I think they're probably one of the least effective bot spellcasters, as they're just very difficult to use. Caninana does have the best spellcaster use from bots, though. Maybe we'll see some Blinding Clouds or Abducts. There is a Greater Spire on the way, and if Caninana can buy time in order to get out a few Broodlords, then things can really begin looking up. Now, Corruptors do find these Colossi in transit. They are going to get on top of one of them, and it doesn't quite die. Still, though, the Zerg is repelling its opponent, as a Viper gets blinked upon, but manages to stay alive. Some Stalkers do go down, so not a bad engagement there, as an Immortal also gets grabbed on the retreat of NegativeZero. Colossi still are getting some phenomenal swipes off. They've got to be very, very careful, though. Rather unsupported presently, and quite injured now. Disruptors are being added into the mix. The Stalkers of NegativeZero do have incredible efficiency, but are they going to save the Colossi? It doesn't necessarily look like it, as the Colossi does wander forward, but somehow they're still sort of spreading the damage out on them. One Colossi has gone down, but NegativeZero, it's now producing 3 Immortals. Now, the answer to Immortals for Zerg is definitely Broodlords, and Caninana does have the Greater Spire finish now, so we could potentially see some Broodlords soon. There is a Neural Parasite grabbing one of the Colossi. It does eventually go down, but not before 2 of the Colossi dies in total there. And then there is a Broodlord on the way for Caninana, so things are starting to look up for the Blue Zerg. NegativeZero is poking and prodding. It's got that good Blink Micro. It's got +3 attack on its units. However, pushing in to the Zerg creep is looking quite difficult. Caninana has basically a revolving door of units, roaches, that are just attacking, taking some damage, then retreating, and this is kind of just perpetuating this fight. Now, the Stalkers do have quite high burst damage, and there is Observers out, so some of these roaches are going down. We've got a poke on the left side and sort of a poke on the right side. Neural Parasite does grab yet another Immortal for Caninana, which is quite nice. Disruptor going out, almost grabs the Infestor to free the Immortal, but not quite. The Broodlord is still causing some problems here. NegativeZero is getting closer to pushing up the ramp, but it's yet to happen. The Protoss is still just pumping out as many units as possible. Likewise with the Zerg. Sometimes these games simply come down to whichever bot can trade better. And while the Broodlords do have long-term promise for Caninana, I mean, things are looking a little rough. It might be having a tough time getting all that supply back out. Caninana really just needs to hunker down and try and get up to like 5, 6 Broodlords or more. Neural Parasite does grab an Immortal, but Disruptor will free that Immortal as the Protoss is stepping onto creep now. Caninana is having a bit of a tough time. Vipers getting energy while all these other units are being controlled. Double Neural Parasite, triple Neural Parasite on the Immortals of NegativeZero as Caninana goes to work. And yes, is able to soften up some of those Protoss units. Meanwhile, the Broodlords are still sieging on. There is a world in which Caninana is able to push this back, buy enough time, maybe get out a few more broods. Now, the Protoss has a Colossi that eats Parasitic Bomb, the only ground unit in the game that can be targeted by those because they're so darn tall. Now there is more Immortals being produced by NegativeZero. The Zerg is trying to take the gold base over here. There is an Immortal harassing to the upper right, but that is actually taken down as Caninana does a good job dispatching Lings to handle that, while it's also defending on the front lines with these Broodlords. Now, things are not great for the Zerg. It has lost a lot of supply. Neural Parasite, though, trying to help out, grabs an Immortal. The Broodlords are helping buffer for this. Parasitic Bomb to kill an Observer. That's a good use of a spell to prevent that detection, to kill the infestors. Caninana at 160 supply, struggling to maintain, but NegativeZero is also struggling to maintain its supply. These two are dragging each other down into the mud as the Zerg is at 160 supply, NegativeZero at 180, so not much in it there. And we'll just see whether Caninana can start to mine at this base. It's getting some spores, getting some spines that will really help out with the harassment. Things have cooled off as both of these bots have lost some supply. Now NegativeZero is getting out a Void Ray, and it does seem to be going for another attack. Caninana has 4 Broodlords total now, which is really, really nice. There is 16 Stalkers to counter them. The Void Rays will potentially help out with that. Those Broodlords need to get back into position, and Caninana does have 2 very injured hatcheries here, which could cause some problems. The Zerg has to rebuild some drones as it looks to try and repel NegativeZero once more. This is a phenomenal game between these two bots. Now we do see disruptor shots getting tossed on out. NegativeZero does have a Void Ray on the way, an extra Stargate going up. The Protoss army is moving forward. Caninana up to 165 supply though, and still holding there. The 4 Broodlords are still alive. Where are they though? Okay, they are just at the back there. Yeah, they do need to get to the front lines and get to sieging away. They are definitely doing whatever they can and are helping Caninana out. Caninana has to move forward, trying to save this hatchery. Disruptors keep getting connections, killing off larvae. Oracles are now being added in for NegativeZero, the first stage of a transition to air. Neural Parasite grabs an Immortal. Broodlords are kind of shooting at that. And Caninana is still just barely holding on, pushing its opponent back. The Immortal gets freed, gets killed off. These 2 infestors do have lots of energy. NegativeZero is being repulsed. However, at the same time, there is a couple Stalkers and a Void Ray harassing. The Void Ray pushing away the defensive Broodlord. That's really nice. Meanwhile, this gold base actually goes down, and so Caninana's economy is being hit hard all of a sudden. That's one of the things NegativeZero does best, is just control and decide to send out a small amount of units to harass its opponent, and all of a sudden this fight is covering a much larger area. Caninana is struggling to survive now. It's losing a lot of income from these drones that are burrowed, just trying to stay alive. And yeah, NegativeZero is moving forward. The Zerg still has some spellcasters, still has some Broodlords. The Void Ray helping with the harassment was a really nice touch though. Caninana has 5 Broods to try and push this army away. It's definitely taken damage, but it can potentially come back if it can just sort of go up in supply a little bit. That's very difficult though when taking fights like this, as NegativeZero cleans up more and more of the bases. This hatchery is still alive for now. A disruptor does get a connection, doesn't quite finish it off. A Broodlord's trying to save the day. The Spinecrawler's buffering. Zealots are killing off creep tumors, but the hatchery is so darn low. It's still alive for now. The Stalker does finish it off, and the push towards the front lines is very powerful. Now a Void Ray gets Neural Parasited, so that's just Prismatic Aligning, trying to target down the Observers, and it does go down. But I think NegativeZero has dealt fatal damage with the taking out of these few bases. We're hearing more assimilation successful. But, yeah, it's just not enough for Caninana. So we see that NegativeZero is able to triumph in the late game, even against some of these Broodlords, when it does have a stable foundation of lots of bases. It takes very good trades. Like, the overall trades weren't like amazing, but it really was just that attack that really crippled Caninana. Having like 10 drones burrowed and not mining really delays your production, and then eventually NegativeZero is just too big. So well done by NegativeZero. These two really do have very close matches. Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoy them, click that like button if you haven't already. If you do want to support these daily casts, consider becoming a YouTube member. You can use the join button down below to see the perks. And yeah, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. More bots, you guys know it, you're the best at it. And I will see you guys next time. GG.